So here we will see what is WSDL, what is SOAP, how you can implement a SOAP-based web services, how you can start RESTful web services, what are the major differences between these, what are the major elements of the web services. We are going to focus in this session. As we know that web service is a piece of business logic or piece of functionality, we can say. That functionality can be accessed independent of the technology, independent of the operating system, independent of the network and protocol, right? That's what already discussed as a part of SOA. Here, is just we are web services are nothing but a implementable version of the SOA. May not be completely, at some extent, some maximum extent up to 85% of SOA specifications can be implemented by using web services SOA API. Web services API. These web services mainly works on top of the HTTP protocol. HTTP protocol is the backbone of the web services. These services, HTTP is related to the web. That's why we are calling it as a web services. These functionalities are business logic we can access over the HTTP protocol. That's why we are calling it as a web services. It is we can say that web services initially we use it to access only HTTP content, right? Websites. To static content or dynamic content we can access using the HTTP protocol. That's what first phase of the HTTP. And the second phase of the HTTP is even HTTP can be used to get a bigger functionality over this protocol. We can see a lot of capabilities of HTTP, particularly when we go to RESTful web services. RESTful web services are 85% or 90% using the HTTP capabilities. We are going to check what are the internal methods, how we can use these HTTP methods to perform some kind of card operations, create, read, update, and delete operations of any resource or any information. It is very, very similar to HTTP. RESTful are very similar to HTTP. We are using the capabilities, exploring the capabilities of HTTP protocol, all functions of the HTTP method extensively used in the RESTful APIs. So of course, web services can be implemented in two ways. One is the SOAP-based web services. SOAP-based web services are using XML as a messaging system, and it is somewhat too heavyweight. It takes a performance point of view. It's not that good. To improve the performance, RESTful is very helpful. Representational state transfer APIs are very helpful. Yeah. So here in the SOAP-based web services, data can be exchanged in different formats, but in the SOAP-based web services, data can be exchanged in the XML format. And these services are loosely coupled, and you can implement these services synchronous or asynchronously. In case if you want some kind of real-time applications where you want to put more time constraints, synchronization, blah, 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 you can use even synchronous calls also. Particular web service can be invoked synchronously, and wherever these constraints, even you can use asynchronous also. So both are possible. So web services not only asynchronous, it supports synchronous calls as well. That's what. And if you look into as of now, these functions, methods, whatever you write, those things are accessible within an organization or within an operating system or within some boundaries, right? Very limited boundaries. But using these web services, we can access across the organizations, out of the organizations, so that you can reuse your functionality at very high degree. So reusability can be dramatically improved using these web services. That's what one of the main point. You know what is the advantage of the reusability? It improves the productivity, it reduces the cost, and quality also can be improved dramatically. So reusability is one of the desirable characteristics across an organization to maintain their leadership, right? So you can expose your services at very large scale by using these web services. Not only within an organization, across the organizations, throughout the world, anybody can access. That's what the maximum degree of reusability. If you follow these web services, and even across the companies, allows the cost to time. These are some of the things wherever, I don't know. Nowadays, every sector is trying to use these web services, particularly at wherever large community. You want to expose your services to the large community, then we can use these web services, particularly stock exchange and some kind of delivery of goods or flight booking system, weather information service, maybe some kind of marketing information. Very large community, wherever you want to expose your functionality, you can use these web services. As we already discussed, pointed out, these web services can be implemented in two ways. One is the SOAP-based web services, another one is the RESTful web services. SOAP is nothing but a protocol, messaging protocol actually. Messaging protocol. Acronym for SOAP is Simple Object Access Protocol. This is a protocol, but internally the representation of the data is in XML format. This protocol defines the rules or the structure of the message, order of the message, or format of the message, but how you are placing this data, that is placed by using the XML. XML is the technology. Internally, you are putting the data, you are placing the data in the using the XML technology. On top of that, you can define the structure, you can define the order or format or some kind of additional metadata. You can put it by using the SOAP. SOAP is a protocol to define some kind of additional rules and regulations on top of these XML technologies. That's what the major advantage of this. Yeah, and some people may think that SOAP is a SOA protocol. Technically, it is not SOA protocol. It is a it appears that service-oriented architecture protocol. Actually, service-oriented architecture protocol is HTTP. We can say that as of now. Most of these services are implemented on top of the HTTP, but this SOAP is a protocol for messaging to transfer the data, to exchange the data between the services in the form of the SOAP. SOAP is a messaging protocol. It's not a transportation protocol. Of course, transportation happens on top of the HTTP. Only messaging, the kind of information that you are transmitting or exchanging between the services in the form of the SOAP. But transportation happens through the HTTP protocol. HTTP is nothing but a vehicle and to transfer the data. The vehicle can carry any kind of data, right? Any kind of data. That data you cannot keep some zigzag or some structured representation is required. That you can define by using the SOAP, but basically data in which form? It can be an Excel, or it can be a plain text, or it can be some kind of JSON or something. But here in the SOAP, we are using XML to represent the data. To represent the data, structure can be defined or the data can be formatted by using this SOAP protocol. So that's what the major significance of the SOAP. And RESTful web services, here the data can be represented either in the XML, different types of different ways you can represent the data. One is XML, JSON, these are the or even in the plain text also, maybe in the HTML also, different types of different ways you can transfer the data, particularly in the RESTful web services. But in the SOAP, it's only XML. That's what the major difference. And this how this messaging is SOAP. And there are some kind of APIs. Those APIs we are calling it as a JOX WS. JOX WS is nothing but a Java API, XML for XML. The WS is nothing but a web services. This WS is web services, represents the web services, particularly for SOAP-based web services. And if you want to RESTful web services, we have to use JOX RS. RS is nothing but a RESTful service API. RS, these are the two libraries we have to use to implement these web services, particularly for SOAP-based web services. We have to use the JOX WS API. To implement the RESTful web services, we have to use the JOX RS library. And if you look into what are the major elements in any web service, as we already discussed that in web services there are three elements. One is the registry that is used to store the information about the different services. It is a kind of a registry to maintain the information of different services. And another one is consumer, service consumer or service requester, and who is going to request the service, any kind of service. The parameter, these are the types of the parameter, and these are the different messages that you can use it to communicate with me, and these are the different response messages. These are the different kinds of messages I can return. This kind of information should be registered or should be updated by any service provider whenever the particular service is up and running. If any other additional information is required, he has to put it in the registry. The service provider should be placed in the registry. And whenever, that's what this process of placing this information in the registry, we are calling it as a publishing the service or the registration of the service. So whenever the service is developed and up and running and it is ready to serve, immediately it has to publish this information to the registry. That's what the functionality has to do from provider side, service provider side. And another one is consumer side. Whenever consumer is nothing but a client, if you want to some kind of service, then you don't know what are the different services that are available related to his requirement. Then immediately you can contact the registry service to your weather information or related to your request. And this requester can decide whatever is the best service based on the requirement. And then immediately you can send the response. You will get all those information, name of the service, and then parameters, and provider can take that request and process the request and send back the response to the client. So this is what the communication. This is how these three elements work together to get a bigger functionality or to address these challenges actually. So without registry, it is very difficult to the consumer to find it out. What are the different services that are available based on his requirement, based on the requirement, right? So that's why this registry is very important. So registry maintain a centralized information about different services. What are different services that are registered? And then these clients can query based on the requirement, and this registry service can return. So that's what the mechanism, and the communication between these requester and then provider is done by SOAP protocol in case of the SOAP based web services, and in case of the, that is a messaging format, but the service description, everything is done by XML file. These XML files, we are calling it as a WSDL, WSDL. WSDL is nothing but a web service. W means web, and S is nothing but a service. D is nothing but a description. L is nothing but a language. WSDL. Again, WSDL is about the description about the service, name of the service, and then WSDL is very, very important in any SOAP-based web service to get the more information about a particular service, name of the service, and then port, on what port particular service is accessible, what kind of messages that you can exchange, what are different parameter types and order. It's very simple. It is generate the request, and then that will be transmitted over the HTTP protocol, request and response. From the server side, from the service side, there are two elements. The message will be received by the SOAP processor, and message processor, or the SOAP processor. And SOAP processor will take the message, and then it will process whatever is the structure of the SOAP message. If the request, everything, it validates the request as per the SOAP syntax or SOAP format. And if it is fine, then only the SOAP processor transfer the request or invoke the service. Invoke the service with the required data, whatever is the data that is sent by the client. So based on those parameters, the service business logic will be invoked by the processor. This is what happens from the service side. You have to understand that in service side, there are two things. One is the service business logic, another one is the processor, or SOAP processor, or messaging processor. Messaging processor will receive the message and then send back the message. Messaging processor or SOAP processor, after receiving the message, everything is fine. It will validate the request. If everything is fine, then that SOAP processor will invoke corresponding business logic that is available from the server side, service side. And then once the service invoke, the server is going to be executed and then send back the response, submit back the response to the SOAP processor. SOAP processor is going to send back to the client. That's how it happens. The point here is that from any service, there are two things. One is the message processing unit. Another one is the business logic unit. That's what the point here. And web services SOAP, we already discussed. SOAP message is passed by the service at the server side, right? Client data is converted into XML by using the SOAP format. It is sent over the internet, that is nothing but HTTP. Data and required information is understood by server side as a message processing unit from the service side, and then it will invoke corresponding business logic and send back. So as we know, the SOAP is messaging mechanism. SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. SOAP is used for communicating between two applications or two services. The SOAP is a format sending messages, communicate over HTTP. It makes independent, and internally the SOAP is using XML technology, and this is W3 recommended. And if you look into the SOAP, there are three elements will be there. Three elements are there. One is the envelope. Envelope is the root element, and the header. HTML has three elements, right? One is the HTML is the root element, head and body, right? header and body. Similarly, SOAP also has three elements. Envelope is the outer root element, and header is the optional element. Specify some kind of generic information and all those things. Body should be there. Actual data can be represented by using this body. So body is mandatory and header is optional. Suppose if you look into this is a sample SOAP request message, SOAP request message. This is the envelope and this is the name. This is the namespace, right? SOAP is the namespace. Envelope is the tag name, and but here there is no head, right? Only body is there. Body, and within the body there is a, this is the data. Actually the data Oracle get a stock price, and then Oracle, this is the XML document. This is actual data that is represented in the XML. That's what the request message looks like. And the response message here also same. Outermost element is envelope, and then within that envelope there is no head. Head is an optional, body is there, and this is the response message. Internally the message is body contains an XML tags only, right? And WSDL, that's what the SOAP, it is structure of the SOAP message and basic elements of the SOAP. And if you look into the WSDL is a web service description language. It is mainly used to uh, provide the description, provide the information about the particular service. Yeah, this is so important. It is very, very important. These are the 5 elements in any WSDL file, and types is nothing but one of the major section that is used to specify the data types of each web service. Web service used to have many parameters. Each parameter can be different to data types. Those data types will be defined in the type section. Another one is the message, and in the message section, messages for the communication, request and response messages. One service can have multiple methods. Each method has different kinds of request messages and response messages. Request is nothing but input message and output messages. What are different input messages and output messages of each operation? You can get it from the message section. Another one is the port section, port to type. This is used to specify what are different operations. What are different operations that are supported by this web service will be provided by the port type. And binding is nothing but what are different protocols, transportation protocols that are supported by the particular service. And service is nothing but a location, URL of the particular web service, fully qualified URL name. You can get it from the service section. These are the 5 elements, very, very important. We have to understand. Some web services we can directly develop by using the WSDL. WSDL is an interface to a web service, right? So we have to understand, we should be in a position to write a WSDL file for your web services. So these are the 5 sections, so important. We are going to look into it, and this is how it looks like. Anyway, we are going to do some practicals, then you will get more clarity. I'll show you. And Apache is nothing but a messaging processing unit. Particularly for any service, there is a message processing unit should be there. Those APIs you can get it from the Apache access. And if you look into any web service, it looks like a simple Java, and even you can put this web service information, what classes should act as a web services, either in XML or annotations. It is very simple. In the annotation is very simple. At web service, if any Java class is annotated as at web service, then that can be treated as a web service. It is so simple, and that's how we can implement it in the. There are different ways to implement in different editors. This is the simple way to create a web service in the Eclipse. You can go through it, and anyway, I'm going to show you in the NetBeans. That is also very simple. And this is the RESTful web services. We are going to study these RESTful web services in the coming chapter, coming unit. As we already discussed, REST is nothing but acronym for representational state transfer. What is a representation? What is state? What is transfer? What is the significance of HTTP? What is the correlation REST and HTTP? We are going to look into it very detailed manner in the next coming unit. So JAX-RS is a library for RESTful implementation, and there are annotations at path. At path is nothing but to specify the URL, and at get is nothing but to read, to provide the information. Produce is nothing but to provide the output. We are going to look into these things very detailed. This is just an introduction. And using these, if you don't want to use the annotations, even you can use the XML file to provide what method should act as a request and what method should act as a resource or a response, and what class should do, what is the URL of particular class, and all those things. We are going to look into these very detailed